Hey there, how are you? It's Dave Trafford, and this is the Writ Race. It's the daily version of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics podcast for Story Studio Network. Good of you to join us. And I just wanted to add a little bit of bonus material here. Have the opportunity to sit in on the Week in Review panel with Mark Twohey on Newstalk 1010. And we kind of kicked around some of the issues that popped up last week, and looking forward to what's happening this week, including the Monday night debate among the four major party leaders and what it's going to feel like. So have a listen in. This is from Ontario Votes on Newstalk 1010.
Welcome to Toronto's only nightly election-focused forum. This is Ontario Votes on the iHeartRadio Talk Network. Please welcome your host, Mark Twohey.
Hey, that's me. Welcome back. We are here 7 to 11 p.m. Monday to Friday talking Ontario election and politics. We have an exclusive story to the Toronto Star coming up in just 30 minutes with Robert Benzie joining us about what he learned in that happened in a secret caucus meeting in the PC Party of Ontario and how fortunate they think they might be at the end of this election. But we'll put that question to our Week in Review panel. My guests and panelists are Dave Trafford, host and producer of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics podcast, and Trevor Mayoh, a political commentator. Gentlemen, welcome to Ontario Votes.
Hello, Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
I am doing well. It is Friday. It is gorgeous outside, and I couldn't be in a happier mood. And apparently, also in a happy mood, the entire PC Party of Ontario campaign team, because the Toronto Star has some insider information Robert Benzie's going to talk about with us in half an hour, but he's already published the gist of it, and that is that an internal PC Party poll projects that Doug Ford is going to win a massive majority government. They believe, and they told all of their candidates who were, I'm sure, tickled, maybe not pink, but tickled blue. They're projecting that the Progressive Conservatives could win a majority of 84 to 94 seats. I think they won 67-ish last time. And the NDP would drop to 20-something seats from what they had won, and the Liberals might be lucky to get 10, a growth of 3 over their 7 at the last election. Dave Trafford, let's start with you. The fact that we're talking about this is internal polling that somebody in the PC Party provided to a reporter. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for the PCs that we are even talking about this?
Gives us a whole new meaning to the Friday dump, doesn't it? I mean, usually it's one of these things that they kind of drop on your desk and they just don't want to have anybody around to talk about. So a bunch of things come to mind, and I'm sure, Mark, you've been, involved in campaigns. Two things. First of all, how does this get leaked at this point, the weekend before the Monday night debate? Who was it that would leak something like that, and to what end? And the other side of this has been, a fairly quiet, well-run campaign for the Tories to date. Nothing spectacular. It doesn't matter whether you like the politics or not. You got to give them credit for keeping it quiet. There's been no kind of meme material from the Premier. He's kind of been dull Doug. He's just been quiet. There's nothing really that's been sticking to him. There's no outrage, nothing like that. This kind of drops a rock in the pond and creates a whole lot of ripples that I don't think are necessary. So I'll be curious to hear what Robert Benzie's learned about this.
Yeah, I think, one, this either was leaked by design and with intent, by the party campaign managers, or it came out by somebody who shouldn't have said something to somebody who shouldn't have been spoken to, or Trevor Mayoh. Either way, Trevor Mayoh, I wonder, how does this change the calculus? If I was a PC Party campaigner, I might not be happy. I might be quite happy to let my opposition and the voters think, nah, the Liberals are going to surge back and this is going to be a close-run race. If I really think that we are that far ahead, I might not want people to know.
It's interesting because whether it's true or not, whether the actual polling data is accurate or not, because it is a bit different from what we're seeing in a lot of the other aggregate polling right now. So let's just put that aside if it's true or not. Like Benzie's reporting is always on point. He has an incredible track record of actually getting accurate data from inside the PC party. So this is something that's come out cool. What it says to me are two things. One, I get it in terms of like rallying, firing up the PC crew. I get that. That's cool. It does a good job in terms of putting a narrative out there where putting a bit of a vote split, putting some pressure on people who potentially would be sort of flip-flopping around, putting the target on the NDP, like switching some people from Liberal to NDP, which actually favors the PCs in terms of their vote count. So there is some strategy there. On the progressive side, though, these are the type of things that actually move progressive voters to the polls. When you actually look out and say, oh my goodness, it is going to be a strong PC majority, I can't stay home. My aunt can't stay home. My uncle, my father, my mother, I have to get everybody I know out to the polls. It's really important. So while this is a good morale thing for the PCs, it also does mobilize progressive voters. We know that. The get out the vote is incredibly important. It dropping at this point also will help to get out the vote for progressive voters with the advanced polls, with going to like right now in terms of different forms of voting early. So how it actually factors out to really favor the PCs, I don't necessarily see that being the case. I see it more as something that's going to activate a lot of progressive voters, particularly as we start to head into the heated part of the campaign.
Well, I guess the question is also, does it suppress any conservative votes thinking this is a cakewalk? You don't need me. I'm not going to bother.
That's something that campaign managers are always doing the calculus on. Let's throw the Windsor factor into this and stay on this topic for just a minute. The Premier has spent an awful lot of time, the leader of the PC party, spent an awful lot of time in Windsor. He sees 3 seats there that he could switch from orange to blue. He said so as much today, saying, give us a chance. Just give us a try. Is the knowledge that the government is going to be overwhelming PC, if that's the picture that they're trying to paint in the minds of voters in a place like Windsor, does that make it more likely, do you think, that voters will say, well, I'd rather be on the winning side so that we can get more? Or does that, Dave Trafford, just do exactly what Trevor Mayoh said, which is get all of the progressives and the unionists riled up to double down and make it even harder to win those votes?
Well, I think the Tories focus on Windsor, certainly with the automotive industry there, a lot of the conversation about the e-vehicles, the battery production, all of that sort of thing already played into the Tories' favor down there. So, I'm not sure they needed to fire them up and say, look, we're going to be the winners anyway, so why don't you get on board with this? It sounds as if he's already made the commitment. It can't be, well, we'll make the commitment only if you elect us. I mean, that's not going to play very well. So I'm not quite sure how in the long run that would help them.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I want to get into this topic. Let's start it now. If we have to carry it over the break, we'll do so. Trevor Mayoh, we'll start with you. Everybody, including the PCs, now agree that the amount of money that people on Ontario Disability Support Program make is unlivable. They've all agreed to increase it. The PCs at 5%. The Liberals 20% over 2 years, the NDP 20% immediately. The Greens say they'll double it. And the Greens say, as part of a plan to move to a universal basic income, we had CERB for basically anybody that asked for it. $2,000 a month, no questions asked. We'll claw it back if you shouldn't have got it. Is it time now for a basic income in Ontario and Canada?
I think we've seen a compelling case around the world with COVID response. The frustrating part about Ontario is we had a trial program. We were researching it to actually see what the benefit would have been, the downfalls, what the economic impact was in different regions of the province. We had that. It was canceled by this government. So we don't even actually have proper data points in Ontario for the levers that they want to actually pull. And that's disappointing because, frankly, if the data point said this is not something that works properly in this context, then the PCs have an incredible opportunity to say this is not the environment. It does not work here. We need to find a different lever to pull. So that's frustrating. I mean, the pilot will come back under all the other parties versus the PCs in here. I think we all recognize that affordability is a problem and poverty is a problem in Ontario for people with disabilities, with people in different points of transition. There is a problem here. And I think most people recognize that the government has a role to play here and probably can be doing a lot more in a lot of different regions and different areas. I think a lot of the parties' promises and proposals right now are quite stark difference to the current party who is in power, who actually moved last fall and put tenders out to privatize Ontario Works and the disabilities plan. So there is a big difference this year in terms of what each party actually wants to do to the program, whether it's just a small percentage increase, privatize, or just completely overhaul and toss a lot more money into it. But it is something that should be a much bigger issue in this campaign in terms of what the vision is for Ontario and how to get people working, how to get people with disability support, what that actually looks like in terms of challenging poverty in Ontario.
Yeah, my guests are Trevor Mayoh, a political commentator, and Dave Trafford, host and producer of On the Ledge. We'll come right back and continue with the panel on the matter of basic income. I think it's probably time, and I would support it. We'll find out what Dave Trafford says, and I'll ask both our guests who needs to do what in Monday night's debate to advance their cause and win some votes. That when Ontario Votes returns.
It's what matters most to you, the voters. It's Ontario Votes with Mark Twohey on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Hey, welcome back. We're in the midst of our weekend review panel. My guest panelist, Dave Trafford, host and producer of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics podcast, and Trevor Mayoh, frequent contributor on Newstalk 1010, and a political commentator. We were on the topic of universal basic income. The Green Party has said in its platform that it would like to move to a universal basic income, I'm not sure they say universal, but a basic income, guaranteed basic income. I like the idea. As a small C conservative pragmatist, I think it's practical. I think if it was done properly, it would be cheaper than what we're doing now with a hodgepodge of federal and provincial different allowances. Dave Trafford, do you think we're ready politically, like amongst the political set, the government set? Do you think the politicians and the people are ready to explore this idea that everybody gets a basic income?
I think the most remarkable thing this week about this whole issue is that we now have all four major parties in the province saying at least this issue of the ODSP, for example, needs to be addressed and increased. That is a significant step forward, considering the degree to which it's been neglected over the last 20 years. So I think that's an important part of it. But when we look at ODSP specifically, that's legislated poverty. People live on $1,169 a month, and they cannot work. It's easy for those to go on a tirade and say, "Well, just get a bloody job." They can't work. Okay, and if they do go to work, they start to claw back those benefits, and those benefits include the medication they need, the treatments they need, the therapies they need. And we move that thing forward. So that's how desperate this is. So the interesting thing is, folks at Daily Bread Food Bank did a survey through the researchers at the University of Calgary, and that came out about 3 weeks ago. They found that a $15 a month increase in ODSP would reduce the number of food bank visits by more than 250,000 across Ontario in a year. The range that we're talking about right now in terms of increasing is from about $60 for the Tories to the other end, $1,200 for Green. So just think for a second how the kind of pressure we would just alone take off food banks if we were able to do this. You consider the whole thing, Mark. Poverty costs the province $33 billion a year. So I turn the question around and I ask, how can we afford not to do this? And if guaranteed or a basic income is the step towards that, that's how we need to think of this in terms of the cost of poverty. Paying out CERB, for example, goes a long way to consolidating a whole lot of that debt.
Yeah, I think, and this is not an initiative that comes just from the left. Prominent conservative politicians, Hugh Segal, a Conservative Party senator, is an advocate for this. And why conservatives like it is because they would love to see all of the other benefits basically be rolled up into one universal basic income. And if $2,000, for sake of argument, let's say CERB is the right amount. $2,000 is what you need to survive. No huge apparatus of millions or, I guess, tens of thousands of civil servants right now making sure we only give it to the people who need it the most, and every month they have to prove that they need it. The idea that I like is this would be universal, $2,000 a month. Everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. Unless you opt out. and tax-free, $24,000 a year. That set the minimum tax. So anybody earning $24,000 doesn't pay tax on it. Once you go above that, start taxing it. Get it back from people who earn money, but make it easy. Then get rid of ODSP, get rid of Ontario Works, get rid of old age pension, get rid of old age security, get rid of unemployment insurance, get rid of all of those things and the thousands of people that run them, and just say, if this month something happens to you, you're going to get $2,000 a month unless you didn't want it. I think that would be, well, I know it would be because we've done the math. That would be cheaper in the long run and put more money into people's pockets and less into a huge public service. But Trevor Mayoh, if we look at it from the left side, do you think that the left and the public sector would ever allow us to get rid of those jobs?
I don't look at it as getting rid of jobs. I mean, sure, if there's a shrinking of the public service because you're sort of streamlining services, make that case. I see this along with Dave saying, I think it's actually a smarter economic move, right? Like this isn't just about shrinking government. This is actually about an equitable, inclusive government that's actually stepping up and recognizing people of different income levels, people in poverty, people of different ability levels who actually require support in a fair and human way. And it's not just a social benefit, but it's an economic benefit to the province and to the country more broadly, and to the tax base as well. So the challenge is there's a branding problem around universal basic income, right? It's the conversation whenever we bring it up, people just think to someone who's just collecting a check, sitting at home, refuses to work, going to the beer store, and just ordering pizza and doing nothing. That's not what it is. That's not what's happening here, as Dave's outlined. But realistically, these are other people who either the clawback actually prevents them, or they're in a position where they're in transition, they're not able to, they require additional support. These people need support from government, and government to be more equitable and fair in terms of actually how we provide support. But that's good economics. It gets people into work sustainably, longer term, that are less likely to fall out of work again, into paying jobs that are not transitionary or not precarious or not putting them at risk. It is a smarter economic move for all of us to actually invest in this.
Sorry, Mark, you've got experience at City Hall, so you know how expensive shelter systems are. You know how expensive all those outreach programs are. The healthcare services that we would save. So it's not even just in the benefit plans that we're talking about here. It begins very quickly to reach out into all these other services, justice and education and all of those other areas. Yeah. And again, it's not about making it smaller. It's about making it far more effective and efficient and really serving people the way we need to in healthcare, education, et cetera.
Yeah, for the amount that the City of Toronto alone spends on shelter supports for the homeless, we could get rid of the staff and buy every homeless person in the city a house. Problem solved.
It's shocking. Yeah, I know. I hear you.
Let's look forward. We got about 3.5 minutes left. Start with you, Dave Trafford. At the debate coming up on Monday night, who jumps out at you as somebody who needs to do something to move their numbers to advance their cause?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's Andrea Horwath. I think she's having a very difficult time getting any traction, period, and just the whole 901 team that's kind of ready to go at her on election night. Sabrina Nanji reporting at Queen's Park Observer that she's spoken to a number of New Democrats who are already set to call for her resignation as soon as the polls close. So I think she's fighting a war on two fronts to get attention from voters and to keep the cranky NDPers in her own party at bay.
Trevor Mayoh, is that right? And what can she do?
To be perfectly honest, Ontario residents have seen her in a number of campaigns. She's been in that seat for over a decade. They know her, or they've already formed opinions about her and her sort of vision for the party and what she represents. So it's really difficult for her to sort of reinvent or cut through a different message, considering she's been around for so long. She can, it's just very difficult. And the problem she has in that space is that message actually landing, and does she have enough runway to actually allow that to sort of grow and sort of take seed? I don't think so. It's the same problem that the Liberals have too, right? You have Del Duca is on the stage, and frankly, he's starting to see some growth in terms of some of the strength numbers around him as a leader, and trustworthiness. Cool. But does he actually have the time? We are inching really, really close to the end of May. I don't know if he actually has the time to grow that number base that quickly. So everyone who's not the premier has a lot on the line on Monday night. Doug actually does too, because the problem that he has is that he has to stay on script. It's very easy to do. If you saw him in the last debate, the Northern debate, he literally, even his like responses and his like one-liners that people sort of applauded to were written down in a book. So like if he can stay on book, that's what they need to do. It's why he's also shorting out on one-on-one interviews, why he's not doing the scrums after the debate. It's staying on book. That is a strategy that's working for them right now. So he can stay the course quite easily on Monday, but the other ones need to make a splash. No one watches the debates. Like realistically, no one watches other than us and some like fanatics and people who really already have their opinion made. So what really matters is making some sort of waves that like makes it into the papers and the radio and the news and social media the next day. And that's where things start to cut through. So we'll see what happens on Monday night out of that. But like realistically, I don't expect anyone to flip a table or set off fireworks. So like it probably won't be revolutionary. We'll just sort of keep on the pace that we're going.
Yeah, the only way to change the channel is for the opposition to make everybody mad at Doug. I mean, that really has to be the playbook, and I don't see that happening at all.
Unless they
if it hasn't happened already,
right?
Like if it hasn't happened already, like we've been angry for the last 2 years. People have been really disappointed. His numbers were absolutely terrible last year, and people were starting to point their finger and realize that like this is not going well. But he's still poised to take government. He's still poised to form a majority. So like if people were over the last year were universally, no matter what party, people were ticked off at this man, thought it was bad, things were not going well, yet he's still in the position that he is right now. I don't see what's going to change direction so significantly in the next few weeks.
Trevor Mayoh, political commentator, Dave Trafford, host and producer of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics Podcast. Thanks for your time tonight.
Hey, take care, guys.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good weekend. So just as a footnote to that, what's interesting after we had talked about ODSP and the commitments that all the parties had made to it, the day after, I guess it was Sunday, the NDP came out and said, no, you know what? We're going to double it right away. So they're taking a page out of the Green playbook. And again, pointing out that all of a sudden, attention to poverty has become a political priority that we have never seen before in this province. Is that going to be the sleeper issue? I don't know. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. We're going to, anytime we do the radio hits, when we're invited on, we'll include them and drop them in the feed here because it's always interesting perspective to get from Mark and his guests on Ontario Votes. You can listen to that program on Newstalk 1010 and a number of iHeart radio stations across the province of Ontario. Thanks for joining us. Well, we'll be back in your feed before you know it. I'm Dave Trafford. It's Thrift Race, the daily edition of On the Ledge, the Ontario Politics Podcast. Talk to you tomorrow.